Okay, cool. So everybody welcome to the window in the wall. um, pen and ink and watercolor. Cool. Alright, so ladies, so you'll see there, I was very specific about the fact that you make sure that these lines are right. Okay. When I did my little one in my sketchbook, I did it freehand, and it took me quite a long time to get the lines right. Well, not a long time. What actually works very well is if you are going to do it freehand, okay, with this sort of thing, it's usually what we call one point perspective, which means that there is a point in the middle that you will normally have your lines leading to, which actually makes it very easy to draw in the lines accurately. All right, so you would put a dot in the middle, and you'd have your little window. So as long as it's centered and it's not slightly to the left or the right, then it becomes slightly more complicated. But this one happened to be slap bang in the middle of the page. Okay, so as long as when you take the photograph, so if you're ever taking a photograph of something, as long as you're level, then most of the lines will come out from the corner leading inwards. Okay, so this is very slightly different, but not much. So then when I did these lines now, I was basically just using that middle point to make sure, the picture as well, obviously, I was just using that middle point to make sure that I've got my lines sort of roughly in the right place. Okay, all right, does that make sense? So that does make life a lot easier if you're going to look at your photograph and then draw it from that itself. Okay. So as I said, when I did my little one in the book, I basically just put the point there, and then I used the point to sort of bring the leading lines in. Okay. All right. So I've done that, and then again, your perspective is also quite a big thing. Your aerial perspective. So you get what we call linear perspective. So linear perspective is this. It's using lines. That's why we call it linear perspective. And your aerial perspective is what we use when we have something very far away. So when it comes to landscape. So aerial perspective is about the atmosphere, or atmospheric perspective they call it. And that's when you're using colors to show the difference in distance, and not just size. Because size is linear perspective. And atmospheric perspective is colors. So all of your colors are bright as you come forward, and then they disappear, and they get less and less intense in color, etc., the further you go back. All right, so this is mostly linear perspective. There isn't really any atmospheric perspective in this one. All right. So when I did do the little one as well, I just made a point. So you're going to see these colors are actually quite intense all the way through. All right, so this color is as intense as that, basically. Can you see it's just as white? All right. So in order to create more of a sense of distance in this, okay, so these lines have to be obviously accurate so that you get that sense of distance. But also what you want to do here as well is your textures in that. You want to keep those intense textures more around this front plane over here. Okay. So in your bricks, in your wood over here, you're going to keep the textures there. And then these textures over here, you're going to try and make them a little less intense. So you do have the shadows. Yes, you've got to put the shadows in to create that lovely effect and that 3D effect. But you want to keep the textures themselves. Any bigger pen marks, you want to keep in the foreground over here. And then these ones in the background, you're going to make less distinct. So there you would use the thinner, the pen. So the finer pen, so like a 005 or a 003 for these lines over here. And then you can use these more distinct lines over here. You can use like a 01 or whatever. Okay. We do mix and match the pen. So we're going to do the pen and ink sketch first. That's the most important part over here. Get that done. And then decide where are we going to stop with the pen and ink. Alright, so I'm just going to get rid of the book quickly, just so I can find the one. So remember, this was done very quickly, guys. I didn't spend, to sketch it out and to draw it. So it was more a travel journal. So just find it quickly. So you'll see what I mean. If you look here, you can see that all my marks are in the foreground here. Can you see there? And I didn't put any paint on this white area. I decided to leave that just like that because it worked very well. I only wanted color in the sky and a little bit of the bricks, not hectic. So you can see I'm not covering all the white spaces. And then this is where I brought in the textures in the window frame, in the wall a little bit over here, but not everywhere. And then if you look in this background section over here, the lines I use there are very, very light. Okay, so they're not hectic. There's no thick lines. Okay, yeah. But if you look at it in reference to this, you can see I didn't make this quite as dark as that. If you make it very dark like this, you're going to lose, you need a little bit of detail so that your eye is drawn in there. Okay, so don't go and make it your colors as dark. And you see this is very, very dark, so I lightened that up a little bit in here. Can you see there? Okay, so it helps to squint at your photograph as well, just to sort of get a sense of tonalities in it as well. But you can sort of see from this to this where I sort of took it. Alright, but as I said, this was a very rough, this is quite a quick sketch. Like I said, about an hour, it's probably about an hour and a half of drawing, and then about, because I was doing it freehand, and then the painting probably took about half an hour to do. Alright, okay. But of course we're doing it larger over here. So you can do it more loose like this if you want to, but if you want to rather bring a little bit more detail into it, then you can do that as well. Okay, remember this is quite a small one as well, so it's in relation size wise, you know, so you can't really put that much detail in there, it becomes a bit too busy. Now you can see this one I started there as an example for the ladies, just to show them how to work with, I remember this morning. If you guys are interested in doing a dipping pen and nib with a non-waterproof Indian ink. This is done with non-waterproof Indian ink. So where you put the ink on and then you take a paintbrush and then you drag the color in with the color, but the tonality is in there. So it's not a waterproof. You can't put watercolor on top of this. You can only use the grays. It's actually quite a nice way of doing. You can't buy pens like that. The pens tend to go funny colors. You can only use it with it's the Winsor & Newton. It's called non-waterproof Indian ink. I don't think I've discussed that with you guys before. Well, I might have. I probably have years ago. This one was done, the Lichen and Sutherland. That was one of the little ones I did for that. This is a charcoal one I did to show them how to use the charcoal dust and then sort of draw into the charcoal dust. And then these are my little stones from the Richtersveld that I took. I did a little painting of those, I think. So this is just like a little journal of some of my things. Yeah, this is I did this big painting for my mom and dad. Well, I actually did it for myself, and then I gave it to my mom for her 70th. So it hangs up in their house. So whenever I walk into the house, I see this painting. It was one of my best paintings I ever did. So what I would suggest you guys do is get your pen and ink marks on the window frame first. Get that done, and then you can use that as a reference for your other marks that you're going to make. Okay, all right. I like the 01 because it's actually got, it's sort of like an in-between pen where you can sort of get a nice thick line or a finish line as well. You know, you can scratch with it, let's put it that way. Yeah. So I'm going to start getting textures. And remember only to bring in, don't bring the very darks in, so don't make big black marks in here. You only do that at the end. Alright, so once you've got most of your things down, most of the drawing and even the painting, then you can bring your black marks in, because once you've put that black mark down, you ain't going to get rid of it. Alright, so just be very careful. Don't get too carried away. So try and sort of be relatively loosish. So I am using a 1 here, which works quite nicely. So I can get a fine line and a nice thickish line. And I'm going to keep it relatively simple for the moment and then go back into it and add some more texture. So when I did do this drawing, I drew the lines relatively straight, but you'll see that there is a slight curve and that to some of the lintel, so the top part of the window's got a bit of a curve. So I will put that in because it definitely gives it that sense of imminent sort of collapse, you know, or sorry ladies, you can see that I am bringing in this the inside part of the sill, the window sill. Look at me, I'm trying to swipe up. I often catch myself doing it. It's so funny actually. Anyway. Oh, I think it's hysterical. You know, and you always do it and you think, oh god, I hope somebody didn't see me try and do that. But the windowsill, you'll see I'm not doing it black. Can you see there? It's not black. I'm keeping it dark, but not black, because I can always make it darker later, especially when I put the paint on, because as soon as I put paint on, it will obviously get a little bit darker. So always keep in mind, if you're not just doing it as a pen and ink, that you are going to bring a bit of color in. And that was a tricky thing with teaching the ladies with their journals, was like, you know, how to minimize and then put in more pen and ink if you want to, you know, because some people get carried away, you know, so yeah, okay, cool. This is starting to look nice. Just don't, so when it comes to this, don't get caught up in one little area and, you know, just try and do this little windowsill, get all that done. Then go back into it and start bringing in some textures and that with your pen and ink. And then you can start working into this middle area, because I'm very tempted to take my pen and start working in there, but I'm stopping myself. I want to try and get this part done first, okay, and get that nice and detailed. This is not a quick sketch like my last one, so I'm trying to add a little bit more interest to it as well. I'm trying to be a bit more particular. So one of my favorite mediums. And remember to keep broken lines, no solid lines. But all of you are like that, and Elmi, you especially. Have you been doing any art, Elmin, at all? You have been keeping yourself busy. That's good. Okay. Oh, fantastic. Okay, so I'm using, sorry, I did mean to show you that I did pick up the finer pen. So you saw I used the number 1 just to sort of get the outlines. Yeah, so the number 1 to get the outlines and the sort of thicker lines. But now that I'm getting into the finer details, so this finer wood bits, I'm going in now with this pen. Okay, so the very fine one, either a 0.5 or a 0.3. Alright, and I am zooming in on my picture, so I never did that the last time, but I am zooming in to sort of at least follow the grain, because the grain is quite skewed. It's not, if you notice, it's not just straight down, it goes at a bit of an angle and it's got the cracks in it. So I'm trying to get that in, because this is going to make it very interesting. So this is really looking very nice now. As you can see, that's about all I'm going to put into there. I'm not going to put any more detail into that because I am going to be adding a bit of paint to it. Okay. Alright. I can always put more in afterwards. Okay. So always err on the side of caution. Put a little bit less than you think you want to put in. Okay. Unless it's going to be a pen and ink sketch, then obviously you can have a lot of fun. You know. So I tell you, this is still one of my favorite mediums, pen and ink. I really do love it. So like here now, in my last one, you know, I didn't bring this in. You know, I didn't bring this lovely little detail over here at the bottom, which has got this little piece going down. Because last time I was just sort of concentrating on just to get a general idea. So it's nice now to actually add some of this detail into it. So I've got lots of photos from this last trip, with windows and some lovely textures. So I've got quite a few of windows and things that we can do in the future as well when we get bored with other stuff. So. Okay, so that's looking good. Okay, so I'm just going to finish. So you can see this takes quite a bit of time, these mantles, you know, the window sills, should I say. Because I really am concentrating on getting the right feel for them. I really want this to stand out nicely. And it's funny, even though I've done this one, it doesn't bother me to do it again. You know what I'm saying? So when you said to me, can't we do this one? I thought, oh, actually I wouldn't mind doing it bigger. Are you still there, ladies? Oh, yeah. Are you still there? Oh, hang on. Sorry, no, I've somehow disconnected from you guys. Okay, so ladies, I've just picked up the pencil just to get the bricks in as well, because sometimes what happens is you lose the size and all that. So I'm just comparing the bricks because I'm doing it freehand. You may have already put the bricks in, but if you haven't brought them in, then I always compare it to this lintel thickness. Make sure that I'm not getting it too small or whatever. You know, so like there now I can see that that one I've made slightly too small. So I'll try and compare it, you know, to an existing size, if that makes sense. And then that'll sort of get you on the right track, you know. Not that it's too much of a problem, because it's not like we are copying this exactly the same, but I do want to get the sizes relatively the same. Okay. And also the side of the brick will also follow. So this side of the brick here, you'll see there, if you want to draw in those lines, you don't really see them that much on the photograph, but if you want to get this angle right, it also follows to that vanishing point there, okay? And you know that you've got the angle of that brick right. So if you do want to bring that angle in. So I did start it in pen and ink, and then I thought, no, hang on, I need to actually get the size right, better, to get a better idea of the size and relationship to the existing stuff that's there. Because they are interesting bricks, and they've got a nice round feel. So don't make all of your bricks, you know, don't make them square. You can see they're not square, they've got broken bits to them. So with this particular painting of mine, you may want to do it a lot looser than me. You may not want to bring in those specific details of the bricks as well. You might just want to concentrate on the window. Then the bricks you can just do loosely, as long as you have an idea of which direction they go in, you know, how thick they are. So don't just do guesswork. Try and get that, at least the sizes of the bricks relatively right. Like this little broken bit over here that you just put in, you know, I'm not going to follow that exactly. I'm just going to use what I have as a reference, and then use that, and then put the bricks in to follow that. Obviously my picture's slightly bigger, so what's nice about doing it this way is if I decide I want to make it smaller, I can bring it in, because I haven't already done the drawing to the side. So I might just fade it out, or you know, I may not bring it all the way to the edges like I did with the small one, but that'll be up to you. You can decide how far out you want to take this, okay? I've just been sketching this little piece in with the pencil just to make sure I've got the windows and doors on the right place, etc. So I've just sketched that with the pencil before I go in with a pen. I didn't want to make a pen mark and then it's not in the right place. So that's why I still said you have to take quite a lot of time when it comes to this little part over here. The rest is not as bad, but this is like quite important, you know. So you can see I've spent a fair amount of time working with that and just getting everything in the right place so I can go into it now with a pen and ink. I feel confident now that I've got the windows and the windowsills in the right place, etc. Yeah, so I will go into it just now. What is the time? Okay, it's actually almost our break time. So I think we do need a bit of a break because it's been quite an intense, like, you know. I don't know how far you ladies are, but that's as far as I am at the moment. So yeah, you might be further than me because some of you are a lot looser than I am. I just decided this one I'm going to be a little bit more focused on it. Okay, so don't stress. Okay, so we are back from our break. It takes me about 2 hours to do the editing of the recordings. So to edit all all the chatter out. It's the chatter part I have to edit out. That's what takes me long. Okay. I don't know if you guys continued on with yours during the break. I just had a break quickly. So I'm going to go into this now that I've actually sketched this out quite nicely. I'm going to go into it. I'm just going to make the lines a little bit lighter so I can sort of see what I'm actually doing before I go in. And I'm going to do these lines very, very lightly with the 005, just so it doesn't interfere too much with my window frame. And I'm going to use sort of broken lines and very, very fine lines, okay? Because I can always make them darker afterwards. I always think I can always make them darker afterwards. Okay, so I'm just going to get my general line in here. Very, very light. Very lightly. Very light broken lines. Obviously, artistic license, you can change these to just a plain pole. You don't have to do the whole ball thing if you don't want to. But I find it does add a bit of interest to it at least. It's very easy to suddenly like make a thick line, so just always be aware of that lightness in your pen, okay? Because I find I battle sometimes to actually stop. Also, if you're ever doing something in perspective, usually your vertical walls will always be vertical, absolutely vertical. They'll be at 90 degrees to your horizon, okay? That's the one thing I did notice about this lady that was giving us a retreat, the one I'm going to. It's the one thing I did notice is her perspectives, her lines aren't always vertical in her houses. And that put me a little bit off, but I thought, but I know how to do that, so it's not an issue. So if you're ever drawing a house, you know, and in the photograph it shows us leaning like that, don't ever make it lean like that. It just looks wrong. And your eye's going to keep on going to that. Now, it doesn't matter how many times you say it's right, it's not right, okay? So you must always make sure that one line in that painting, the edge of the building or whatever it happens to be straight. All right, it must always be at 90 degrees to your horizon line. All right, okay. As I said, unless it's like a shack and it's like really leaning over, the wind's blowing, you know what I'm saying? So, okay, but you get it. If you want to leave this little piece of wall out, you're welcome to. You can just put blue sky in there. The reason I left it in is because it almost creates a leading line, the blue, and then this little triangle over here, the blue again. So that's why I decided to leave that wall in there. But you could leave it out if you wanted to, and you could just make it shorter. You know, you could make it a shorter piece of wall. So artistic license, as I said, it's entirely up to you. And always just confirm where the line is that you're working on before you go and put it in. Remember, if you do erase, make sure that you don't erase directly on top of the pen and ink if you just put the pen and ink down, because it can smudge slightly, but usually after about 30 seconds to a minute it's usually fine. So you can make, in this window itself, inside the window, you can make these, like for instance this pole over here in the foreground, and this window over here. You could make that a little bit more, a thicker line or darker line if you want to, but just make sure those ones right at the back are as faded as possible. And I'm not going to put much detail into these as well, these back ones. Oh, sorry. I think it's me. No, it's me. Okay, I just realized actually, because I moved it down. There we go. Better?
Okay.
Sorry, guys.
Yeah, perfect.
So this is the window that I took the photograph of while I was on that last bike trip in December. It's the one piece of dirt road that we did before we had to stop riding. Yeah, so what was interesting was I took it from the other side as well. So I've got a photo from the other side of the window looking out. So it's also quite a nice one. Not as interesting as this. I just found these perspectives to be fascinating, and it just worked very well for this particular one. But I was standing by this window over here taking the photos of this one, and we honestly thought it was an abandoned house. Then I suddenly hear this flap, and there's no wind blowing, and I hear this flap, and I look and I see this thick black plastic on the window on the inside. I thought there's actually people living inside there, you know. So anyway, but I took photos, and then as I walked outside, because I took a photo from the house far away, and I saw one of those little plastic motorbikes, you know, those ones that the kids play with. And then further up the hill there was actually a little hut type of thing, or a little old house, and then there were actually people in there. So I thought there's actually people living inside this abandoned house. So they just let me know by the little flap that, by the way, don't even try and bother coming in here. But it was quite creepy, to be honest. But I mean, we were literally between Beaufort West and Fraserburg, in the middle of nowhere, like on this dirt road, which is like quite bizarre. So you'll see that you'll see what I mean by, you see the door lines? Can you see that the door lines are vertical? Okay. If these were not, if they weren't straight vertical, they would just look a bit strange. But you'll see often when you take a photograph, you'll either make sure that those are vertical, it's like automatic, and other times if you're taking scenery, you'll always make sure, especially the sea, that you make the horizon line is horizontal, it's perfectly horizontal, because that also looks completely wrong. I always see a person who's taken a photograph and they haven't looked at the horizon line. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I did it with a pen, just very roughly.
Oh,
But you don't have to put the grass in. So, like I said, leave out what you don't like, you know what I'm saying?
oh no, I like the grass. I was just wondering
Yeah.
about that.
Yeah, no, I just did a rough, like, sort of a random mark, basically, with the grass. But that you can just put in with the colour as well. So you can just give an outline of it with pencil and then do it, you know, like that if you want. Yeah, these windows are quite tricky. I remember when I did the small sketch, I just eventually thought I'm just going to put a few little lines to indicate where the windows are and make sure I've got those right, but I wasn't going to worry about the detail. Because I was like, no, there's like windowsills and stuff in here. So this one I am being a little bit more detailed. If you want to bring the bricks in and you want to show those specific bricks, use your ruler and then just take it to the point. So make sure you've got your little central point there, and then you give that impression of the bricks so that you don't like this. So there's my vanishing point there, is that there, like so. So say I want to put bricks in here now, like they're like as actually in the picture. To get an idea of where they actually go, then I'm just going to bring a little bit of a broken line like that, and again from the vanishing point, again, then you'll know that you've got the bricks at the right angle. I must send you this guy that does this with a pencil. He does 3-point perspective with a pencil and some string. It's freaking awesome. I'm gonna send it to you guys, okay? It's really, really cool. Like, you guys will just, it looks like so much fun. So he puts like little pegs here, like a peg here, and another peg there. And then he puts a piece of string, and then he takes the pencil, and he just, I'll have to send the video to you. It's brilliant. It's absolutely brilliant. I think, what a brilliant idea.
That sounds interesting.
Yeah, and you will see he does tables and chairs, and he does it so quickly because he's got the string, and it's like, everything's already, it's really, really cool. Yeah, I found it fascinating. I thought, what a brilliant idea. Okay, so there I can see my bricks all right. And obviously the little in-between bits will be at a vertical line going down. There we go. Here are my bricks. Simple as that. Funny, the human eye picks it up so easily because, you know, you see buildings all the day, all the time. So you'll know that it's wrong, you know. Okay, so this line for the shadow, I'm not going to really put it in pen and ink. I'm just going to leave it in pencil for the moment. And then afterwards, if I want to use a pen and ink line there, I will. But for the moment, I'm quite happy just as it is. And I'm going to bring these lovely shadows in here. I love these shadows. These shadows on that wall just make this whole thing. Those are not too important, those, as long as you get them roughly at the same angle. You don't have to make those exactly the same. So those I am going to make black with my pen, because it will be a pinpoint for your eye to go to. So that one I am definitely going to make black there with my pen there. Those little shadows on the wall, but just those, not anything else there. Because you want your eye to go there, you know what I'm saying, when you're looking at this whole thing. So the rest of these shadows, here in the doorways, I have put a very light grey-ish, very fine line, just so I know where the shadows are with my pen. But the rest I'll do with paint. And then I can always go back into it with pen. So the only dark bit I put in is that little piece at the end there, okay, that little window there. That's the only part I've done with a very dark pen. Because you want your eye to go here and then there, towards there. So that's why you can make it a focal point, because it is a focal point as well. Your eye gets led there automatically. And then I am going to bring in the corrugated iron lines as well. So those are slightly different. They don't really follow, so this roof here doesn't follow the same principle as the wall when it comes to perspective lines, because it has got a bit of a bulge in it, and also it's at a different angle to the roof. Okay, so it's a roof angle. So it doesn't work in the same way. So you'll just have to look at the line there on the picture and just see where one starts and then use it as a reference point. So I'm going to take this one here, there's one starting here, and it ends about there. So that will be my reference line that I'm going to use, and then I'm just going to use that as a reference. Okay. Obviously the closer it comes towards me, the bigger they're going to get. But it's just a reference. Okay, so don't be too pedantic about it. This is going to be quite dark anyway, but if you just want to have a few lines in there to show that it's sort of like a corrugated iron roof, you can do that. You can make one or two a bit thicker if you want to. As I said, this will be covered in paint, so you're not going to really see that much of it, but there will be some texture at least. There you go. You see, it adds a nice contradiction to the rest of the very straight lines that we have there. because it makes an interesting point. So I will just use my pencil for the shadowed part of this. So when I'm painting it in, I know where not to put paint, because that I can erase afterwards. Just lightening it up very slightly, just so that when I do put paint on, it's not going to interfere. Oh, that's me, sorry. Oh, excuse me.
Messy.
Thank you. Okay, so we have done all my pen and ink now. I'm just going to lift the pencil with my razor. I don't like rubbing the paper. Elmin, I've noticed one thing as well. So if you use a hard eraser and you rub the paper, it actually affects the texture of the paper. So I tend to just lift it with the kneadable eraser instead of actually rubbing. I try and lift as much as possible instead of rubbing. But that's as much detail as I'm going to bring into this little background section. I'm not bringing any more detail into it, just as it is good. I can always add more detail later if I want to, but for the moment I'm very happy with what I've got there. What I'll do is, I think just with this front pole here, I'm going to bring in a little thicker line on the left hand side, because that's where the shadow is. So just make it slightly thicker on the left hand side. You see that immediately makes it look, even just a thick line, just make, not thick, but it gives it a definition of it. There's definitely more light coming from the right hand side, and on the left it's dark. And I'm going to just fill this in as well. Don't forget to put the shadow in here. It's the roof casting a shadow on the poles. Roof part of the wall. So, yeah, there we go. Okay, so now I'm going to go in. This time around, I'm going to start off with the fine pen here with the bricks, and then the darker areas I'm just going to fill in a little bit more with the thicker pen. You can use a 0.5. Just be careful you don't make it too black. I've also got a 0.8. I went for myself a slightly thicker one. Just if I've got big areas where I want to make it very black. It's not often I get that. This is quite a thick line. I just got it the other day. I just thought, oh, what the hell. So this one makes a very thick line, as you can see, the 0.8. So that's a 0.8. This is the 0.5. Okay, so it's a fair amount thicker. So if you want to use that, but use it judiciously, as they would say. I'm not sure if I said that quite right. It sounded a bit weird when it came out of my mouth. Judiciously. Oh, Lord. Did you get my drift? Okay, so here I'm going to bring in those little shadows, because there's a shadow between the wall and the other wall, but not all the way through. So you can sit here and just use the 0.005 if you want to. You know, you don't have to go and use the bigger pens. But sometimes you just want to get in there with the dark. Remember, we want to keep the nice contrast, except for that little window. You want to keep the nice contrast in the foreground here. So bring in some nice contrast where the window meets the wall, and it creates a nice shadow. And squint your eyes as well. You know, you can see, look, you are copying the picture up to a point, but you also need to decide what works and what doesn't work, if it must be a little bit lighter for your painting or a little bit darker. It's never a pure copy of what you've got in front of you. Okay, so never put in anything that you think might not work. Just rather err on the side of caution and just be a little bit less intense with your colors as well, not just your not just with your pen. So I'm just adding the texture of the wall here with the pen. You can just do this with the watercolor if you want to. You don't have to go all the way in with the pen if you don't want to. You can just leave the pen for this, and the rest can be a little bit of watercolor and a little bit of pen. So this will be very much a personal thing for you. You guys can decide what you want to do here. I'm quite enjoying the pen though, so I'm going to continue on with that. I'm just trying to get that sort of rough wall effect, sort of using a slight random mark. So just notice here, like when I'm doing this line over here, it's a broken line, okay, because it's a light line. So when I'm drawing this line, I haven't made it a solid line, I've made it a broken line. All right, because if you make it a solid line, it's going to come pop out too much towards you. All right, it's only the ones with the shadowed side. So for instance, this line is a shadow. I can make it more solid because it is black already. It's a shadowed area, and that one as well. I could make it quite dark. See, but because this one isn't a shadow area, then you make the line a little bit lighter, not quite as dark, and more of a broken line. So those little things, especially with the black and white thing like this, are quite important when you've got these shadows being thrown. To make sure you have the shadow in the right place. So this shadowed area underneath here, I could just put in with the paint again as well, like I did with my other one, but I'm actually quite enjoying doing all these textures and stuff. I know I'm making more work for myself, but yeah. Yeah, so for this part, because it's quite black, I'm using the 001 for this one. But you'll see I very, very seldom go in and make a big, thick black mark. I'll rather use a little bit of texture here and there. The? The birds, yeah. And they don't stop, eh?
Yeah.
I've got lots of different birds here. I have no idea what there's lots. Very busy today, actually. Okay, so with this brickwork, I'm going to just bring in the shadows in between for the moment. I'm not adding any detail to the bricks. I'm just going to bring in the shadows as I see them, because that makes them stand out quite nicely. And I might just put color in and no texture, so we'll see. Because I've already put some texture into the wall area, you know, this grey bit of wall. And I'm not bringing texture into this at all, except for maybe a hint here and there. Like in the original, as I said, the original you saw it was just white, and then I had a few little pin marks in it. But what I like to do is I like to work on the focal point, so that will be on my focal point, and then from the focal point I'll decide what then needs to be added to the outside. Especially with travel sketching, you really need to look at that. You can't just go in and just put paint everywhere, you know. Depends on what sort of atmosphere you're trying to create. So here I'm using the 0.1 to fill in, but because it's quite big areas of dark, I can actually go and use the 0.5. And then I can just fill it in a little bit quicker, but it still gives me enough leeway to actually give it a little bit of texture in there, because it's still not, I'm still not making it absolutely solid black, as you can see. Very important that don't make anything too solid. You don't want to bring a gel pen into this unnecessarily. So I'm sort of looking at the negative spaces, and because the bricks have got some interesting shapes, and none of them are just a normal brick, they're all slightly skew. That's what makes this wall very interesting. And also your bricks don't have straight edges, slightly broken edges. So none of my bricks have got straight edges. now that you point out the birds, they are very, very, very noisy. Not noisy, they're very chirpy. There have been one or two small marks into the bricks, but that's it. I'm not doing anything like that over there. Just an impression of a little bit of interest there. Go away. These marks you can also bring in afterwards. You don't have to put them in now if you don't want to. You can always put them in later. do yourself a favor as well and just stand up every now and again and look at it. See if it's going in the direction you want it to go. Okay, so I can see it's working very well. This is all coming very forward and that's going further back. And of course, when you bring the colors in, then it's going to become even more effective.
Beautiful. Enjoying this.
Me too. It's such a therapy.
Might not reflect in the quality of my work, but
I'm sure it's good. It's one thing. Most of the ladies that came on this retreat, obviously, because they, most of them had done art in some way or another, work, etc. But none of them had really worked with pen and ink, and they all fell in love with it. I tell you, It was, I just said it's so, so therapeutic. It's weird, it's just a therapeutic medium. Just works. Okay, well, ladies, I don't think we're going to get to the color department of this one. It's like, it's already 12:15. No, but I knew we may not get to the color section of this, but all of you are quite good with color. I wanted to get the pen and ink part out of the way, you know, so, yeah. But you guys, I'm quite sure, capable of putting the color in where you want it to be. I'll send you my photo of the other one. I'm not sure, or did I already put it on the group? I can't remember now.
You did.
I did, hey? The one that I did, yeah. Okay, cool. All right. But you can get a rough idea of what you can do there, you know what I'm saying? So,
I'm looking forward to seeing what we've all done.
me too. Yes, absolutely. Because that'll be a nice little idea just to sort of look and decide, you know, where you want to take it, how far you want to take it. But yeah, I'm just going to give you word advice. Just don't do anything with the outside until you've finished this section and that, because this is what makes it. It's this line coming through here. And I'm not saying you'll be able to leave this completely blank. You won't. It's going to look a bit strange, but just be very careful how much color you put into here. Okay, don't put as much texture. If you really want to, I mean, if you want to go with this wall and make it look exactly like this wall, you know, you can do that. I'm not saying you can't do that, but if you want that starkness that you liked in that original one of mine, then you're going to keep this relatively simple with maybe a few little marks here and there, and just keep this wall simple, because that's what makes this stand out, is the simplicity of this wall. Okay, all right. But as I said, if you do want to make it more realistic and you want to bring in more of this and you want to bring more detail in and not so loose as I did with the other one, then you can paint it more like a realistic painting as well. Okay, so that'll be entirely up to you guys where you want to take it from here. Okay. As long as you've got the shadows and all that in the right place with your pen and ink and everything, then you'll be fine. You'll be fine to go. Yeah, the biggest thing is just to keep your shadows in the right place. Don't mess around with the shadows, alright? Don't put your own shadows in. Follow the shadows of the picture. Especially the angles and that of the shadows. They must be accurate. Because your eye will immediately pick it up if you haven't followed the right shadow.
I think I'm gonna go since I still need hours. through this. I think I'm gonna
Yeah,
eat something.
this will be quite a long journey.
No, but it's lovely.
Anyway, all right, cool. Okay. All right, ladies. Have a great evening. Cheers. Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Okay.